So I figured I'd just go over this because it's something that I haven't really seen a lot of people talking about outside of the muscle community. But what I'm basically going to do here is I just got these off of my donor car over there. It's gutted basically to the bone. I'm going to be doing an M46 swap on this in the meantime. I still kind of want to go with the V8 eventually, but that was a pretty cheap, good deal. I got an extra rear end out of it. And all this stuff is in immaculate condition. So I would like to box these in with reinforcement metal. And these are made out of stamped steel. And they're not all that strong. They're not that bad. But these can flex a little bit under really hard cornering and whatnot. And they also can bend in the case of an accident. And just to kind of strengthen them up and you know, make them a little bit better for cheap, I'm going to be cutting up this lovely box here. The metal is a little bit thicker than the actual steel from the control arms on this, but I think it should still suffice. I just have this for the purpose of using it for scrap metal. So I have these things scratch-alled out here, and I'm going to obviously cut these out in a moment and then kind of go over the simple process of putting this on. I mean, it's very straightforward. You just got to make your measurements and clean up your area where you're going to weld, chop out a plate that fits, and you're pretty much good to go. Any welding nuance would be something that you'd probably want to learn from a welding video. But yeah, I guess I'll continue from after I cut this. So fast forward a little while. I saved you the trouble of going through what I had to go through. But I made a mirror of these, and the control arms are ever so slightly different. I mean, they're the same shape overall, but there's an extra kink here. I don't know if this is like a flaw in the manufacturing process, but on this side it's smooth. But anyways, they still fit, they'll weld up. But that's pretty close to what it's going to look like. I notched out that spot for the lower ball joint here, and I'm just going to start tack welding it. It's got a little bit of bending that needs to be done, so I'll tack it in probably the better spot, and then kind of hammer it into place so that it you know, kind of morphs to where it needs to be. On top of this, I forgot to mention that I plan to put Delrin bushings in this, which is like, oh, see ya. This will be like a harder plastic instead of rubber. I'm not a big fan of the rubber. There's going to be no rubber bushings in my car. Once these are replaced with Delrin, it will be 100% rubber free bushing wise. I've used poly and Heim joints or spherical joints for everything else. So I'm excited to get this out of the way. My old control arms are pretty rusty, so I didn't really want to use those, but now that I have these near immaculate ones, I don't see a reason why I wouldn't press some new bushings into this. Anyways, yeah, I'm just going to tack this thing up, see how it goes. I don't really have space to put a camera down. I mean, everyone's probably seen welding at some point or another just use fairly good settings. Like in my case with a Hobart 140, I'm probably going to be using like 2 or 3, most likely 2. And my wire feed doesn't have to be crazy. I'd say these settings, I haven't touched them, but this is pretty close to what I'm going to be at anyways. But we'll see how that turns out. I have MIG gas now, which I probably haven't mentioned, so my welds have gotten a good bit cleaner. Still nothing special. But anyways, here's my underwear rag. We ran out of rags, and I don't really like these whitey tighties, so there we go. I found a different use for them, more important use. So fast forward a few days later, I lost a little bit of motivation for it because there was a lot of rust on the other side of these that I didn't show. So I had to spend a lot of time. My flap disc wouldn't take it all off very easily, so I treated it with a rust compound. So that took a while. And now that that's done, it's primed underneath and whatever, I decided to go ahead, finish the welds up and grind them down. And they came out pretty good. There's a few spots that I couldn't really grind in very easily, and there's a tiny bit of porosity in some areas. Actually, I wouldn't call it a tiny bit, but there's definitely some. Fid focus right there. I'm not sure if that's a gas issue or what. I definitely have to play with my gas settings some more, but otherwise they came out pretty good. Some of these spots you can't even really tell that well where they start and stop, so it's fairly clean. Came out about as good as I expected it to. But I'm sure a lot of people haven't seen these on Volvos. Like I was saying, for OEM applications, stamped steel is just fine, but I'm assuming that this will help a little bit in the case that I hit something, or just under really strenuous driving and whatnot. There might be a tiny bit of torsion in here, so I figured while I was doing the Delrin bushings, I'm going to just box all this stuff off and strengthen it up. Why not? I never want to take these out again unless I absolutely have to. So that's that. If you know how to grind, weld, cut, all that sort of stuff, make kind of rudimentary measurements, as you can see I eyeballed that completely. They're not even the same size. You can do this. It's not really a big deal. I didn't really go through every step of the process because I'm assuming that anyone who can do those things should be able to figure this out for the most part on their own. This is just kind of a way to describe or go over kind of what it looks like, and just kind of make people aware that this is a thing. But otherwise, hopefully this takes some of the slop out of my front end. Hope you enjoyed. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple video, but now I guess you're exposed to another potential thing you can do to your Volvo or whatever else you got with stamped steel. Hope you have a good one. So I didn't really plan to add this information in, but I figured that this would probably be a good time to do that. So I already finished the other control arm, but I'm on the last Delrin bushing here, and I figured I'd just give you some pointers in the case that you ever want to do Delrin bushings. Or, I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I don't think poly would really apply exactly the same way. I've pressed poly without anti-seize, but they usually come with their own lubricant. This did not, however, so I'm using regular anti-seize, as you can see. I got it all over everything like you typically do. But it was pretty much necessary to get it to slide in there, and you're going to want to use that on the inner sleeve as well. They say that Delrin is self-lubricating, and it should be fine even if you don't. But the big thing is that, especially I believe when it's cold, they can make noises and squeak and whatnot, and it probably, just common sense says that this will wear down with time, and putting anti-seize in there will make it obviously last a good bit longer. Before I put these in the car, I'm not 100% sure yet, but I am kind of erring on the side of putting fittings on this. There's a small gap that I can't really show between both the bushings where there is no bushing at all in the center. And if you drill through where the metal sleeve is, you can thread in, you know, fitting so that you can add more lubricant to it later. And I think that's a really wise idea, because over time this stuff will, you know, kind of seep out, wear down and whatnot. So that's my little quick tip. And to press these in, I hammered this side in, but this side doesn't really leave a lot of room to hammer it in. So if you have a vise or something, I mean, you're not really supposed to use vices in this sort of way, but it'll be fine. I would put it as straight as you can in the vise and just keep tightening it, and it will kind of slowly slide its way in. I think I'm going to probably need a hammer because I don't have the biggest vise, so I don't have a lot of leverage on this tiny little thing. But at the same time, if I had a big one, it definitely wouldn't spin without hitting the control arm, so I'll take what I can. So that will press in. Can't film at the same time, but I figured I'd just explain that. So here it is, Volvo 240, Delrin bushing install, and it's plated. I got these ones in, but these Delrin bushings tend to shrink when they get pressed in, so the supplied inserts don't fit anymore. So I took a smaller socket and wrapped it in electrical tape so it had some good grip, and I jammed it in the end of these. And then I took my drill, more underwear, they make great cloths, and some sandpaper, and I just spun it in the sandpaper for quite a while. I worked it up from 180, I believe, down to like 800 to 1,000. And then I just put some anti-seize in there, and it hammered in with a couple hits, so it should be loose enough. And as for these ones, that's going to take a lot longer. The tolerance is even worse with these, so I was trying to think of different ways to do it. And this is the perfect size to bore this out. It's hard to find drill bits that are big enough. And this is a 7/8, but it doesn't fit through all the way, and you can't fit the drill through this side. So I'm going to have to make a hillbilly drill bit out of this, basically, and I'm going to weld a bolt to the end of it so that it's extended and I can fit it all the way through. Another quick update. That worked beautifully, and bored that entire thing out in a couple seconds. So I just gotta figure out how to get this socket that I got stuck in here out, and then do it on this side. I cut a bunch of grooves in this old socket so that it would chew as it went through, but the impact gun just kind of wedged it in there, and now it doesn't want to move. So that was my first smart guy attempt, and that didn't work out so well.